Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 6 waiver wire ads for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we're going to be discussing some running backs, wide receivers, as well as tight ends that I believe you guys should be looking to go to the waiver wire right now and pick up. But before we do get on into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I'd also like to ask, if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me, to please do so at Notorious FNTSY. The link to my Twitter is also down below in the description. So without further ado, let's get into the video. We begin with the running back position, and my number 1 running back to add on the week is Darrell Williams, running back of the Kansas City Chiefs, going up against the Washington football team in Washington this week. Now, when ranking running backs off of the waiver wire, typically the skill of the running back isn't what necessarily gives them the edge up over another running back. What gives them the edge up is the amount of potential playing time that we could be seeing for this running back. And Darrell Williams is going to be the clear lead running back in Kansas City with Clyde Edwards-Helaire hurt. Right now, the reports are that Clyde Edwards-Helaire will miss a few weeks with an MCL sprain suffered up against the Buffalo Bills in that night game. So going up against the Buffalo Bills, after Clyde Edwards-Helaire ended up getting hurt, he had 5 rushes for 27 rushing yards, as well as 3 receptions on 5 targets for 18 yards. So Darrell Williams is far from this elite running back, but at the end of the day, like I was just discussing a little bit ago, it's all about the opportunity for these running backs when you're picking them off the waiver wire, and it's also about the length of time that you can play a running back off of the waiver wire. So if you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously Darrell Williams should be at the top of your waiver wire priority. But if you don't have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I also believe he should be at the top of your waiver wire priority, because right now Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be missing a few weeks. Maybe that's just 2-3 weeks, but it could potentially be 4 or 5 weeks. So I want you guys to go ahead and pick up Darrell Williams right now, because I believe that the Kansas City Chiefs offense, while it hasn't looked the greatest over the last couple of weeks, right? While it seems like the Kansas City Chiefs may be on a downturn, directly down to earth, after having these last couple of years, after being such an elite team, such an elite offense over the last couple of years, sure, maybe things are on the downturn, but there's also a chance that they just shoot back up. And while the defense sucks complete and utter donkey dick, at the end of the day, maybe the offense will be able to save them in this scenario, and maybe Darrell Williams will be very involved in this offense, and what could be a potential very high-scoring game with the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Washington football team. And again, Darrell Williams has further value outside of just 1 week for week number 6. Next up, we have Devontae Booker, running back of the New York Football Giants, going up against the LA Rams. Now again, this is why we talk about the amount of opportunity that a running back could get for a couple of weeks, because Darrell Williams, in my opinion, is not as good of a running back as Devontae Booker, but Devontae Booker may only get 1 week to shine based upon the recent reports on Saquon Barkley. So Devontae Booker, running back of the New York Football Giants, this week he goes up against the LA Rams defense. So that is far from an amazing matchup, far from an ideal matchup, but I still do believe he is very startable in this game. Saquon Barkley suffered a low left ankle sprain up against the Dallas Cowboys. Barkley is listed as week to week, meaning he will be missing week number 6 up against the LA Rams, but the reports are that he could end up being back for their next game. So don't be 100% confident that when you pick up Devontae Booker that you're going to be able to have a starting running back for like 2-3 weeks, when he may just only miss this game up against the LA Rams. So don't blow all of your fab budget on Devontae Booker, unless of course you have Saquon Barkley and you really need that fill-in at the running back position. So after Saquon Barkley ended up getting hurt up against the Dallas Cowboys, Devontae Booker had 16 rushes for 42 rushing yards and a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions on 4 targets for 16 yards, and you guessed it, another touchdown up against a pretty strong Dallas Cowboys defense. Now, the biggest worry here for Devontae Booker is that this whole offense is just down bad. Like, the whole fucking offense is hurt. Daniel Jones gets hurt. Now, I haven't seen anything about Daniel Jones probably missing this game up against the Rams, so my assumption is that he plays. But will Darius Slayton be in the game? Will Sterling Shepard be in the game? Honestly, that all seems up in the air to me at this point, but even if all of those guys are hurt, there's just more reason to give the ball to Devontae Booker, so I like him this week up against the LA Rams. And again, just don't expect him to be on your lineup, in your starting lineup for multiple weeks, because based on everything I've seen, Saquon Barkley is pretty likely to return in week number 7. So after Devontae Booker, we move down to the third running back, and this is where there is a huge tier drop off, because I'm very confident in Darrell Williams. I'm very confident in Devontae Booker for this week, but then after that, it really does dip off because Alex Collins, running back of the Seattle Seahawks, while he's an alright running back going up against the Steelers defense this week in Heinz Field, which is a bit scary, the thing is, it's not 100% that Chris Carson is going to be missing this game. Pete Carroll did say it is too early to tell if Chris Carson ends up playing in week number 6, but to me, that doesn't seem like a guarantee that he is going to be missing. To me, that seems like they're a little bit optimistic that Chris Carson will be able to play in this game, and you got to match that with the fact that Geno Smith is going to be the starting quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks for at least the next couple of weeks while Russell Wilson is healing, and that even further complicates the situation. Now, last week, Geno Smith, after Russell Wilson went down, he was cooking it up. I understand that ultimately at the end of the game, he did throw that costly interception, but he looked pretty solid. But how solid will he look with a week of game planning from Mike Tomlin onto him? I'm just not too sure, but I think if Chris Carson doesn't play, then Alex Collins has to be rostered because you can definitely play him. Definitely doesn't have like top 12 potential, but he is a guy that will at least get you maybe 8, 9, 10 plus points in this game up against the Steelers. Week 5 up against the LA Rams, he had 15 rushes for 47 yards, as well as 2 receptions on 3 targets for 25 yards. So in terms of fab, don't break the bank to get Alex Collins on your team, but he is certainly worthy of a pickup. Next up, we got Michael Carter, running back of the New York Jets, the Jumbo Jets, this week going up against the dreaded bye week. So if you need a running back to play this week, don't pick up Michael Carter because he's not playing this week. We have finally entered the bye weeks in week number 6. There are a bunch of teams on bye this week, so make sure that you guys check your rosters because you're probably likely to have at least a couple of players that are on bye this week. To me, Michael Carter is the clear lead back for the Jumbo Jets. He was last week, and to me, he looked like he was the week before that. In week number 5, up against the Falcons in London, he had 10 rushes for 38 yards. I understand that that number isn't great, right? You want him to have like 4.5, 5 yards per carry, but you can't really expect those high numbers for a running back on the Jets. Why? Because the Jets offense isn't that great, but I do believe the Jets offense is on the correct path to continue to figure it out, and Michael Carter is on the correct path to continue to be the lead back for the Jets. Now, any running back on any team that is the starter, that is the main guy, inherently has value in fantasy football because in fantasy football, in the NFL, there are only 32 starting running backs. But when you look at the wide receiver position, there's more than 32 starters because a lot of the time there's 2, 3, maybe even sometimes 4, 5 wide receivers out on the field. Whereas normally, there's just one running back. So it's a lot easier to find depth at the wide receiver position compared to running backs. And that's what makes a guy like Michael Carter so valuable. He also scored a touchdown on those 10 rushes for 38 yards. He also had 3 receptions on 3 targets for 20 yards. The issue here is that I don't believe Saleh has completely 100% pot committed to Michael Carter because they still use Ty Johnson on the goal line. They still use Tevin Coleman a little bit. And once they really kind of shift from the true running back by committee approach and let Michael Carter cook, I believe this offense will be going up and up and up, and especially if Zach Wilson continues to look better, the offense as a whole looks better, that is going to continue to help out Michael Carter's value week in, week out. But again, this week, he's playing up against the bye week, so don't expect him to score any points. Now on to the final running back ad of the week. We got Khalil Herbert, running back of the Chicago Bears, going up against the Green Bay Packers. But before we hear about him, please make sure that if you are new to the channel and you have ended up enjoying today's video, to make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you hit that like button down below. Now, for Khalil Herbert, obviously his value is 100% ingrained in the fact that David Montgomery is hurt and is likely to miss the next couple of games and potentially miss all the way up until week 11. So Even with David Montgomery hurt, though, Khalil Herbert isn't necessarily going to be the guy seeing a majority of the snaps. Damien Williams is that answer. Damien Williams played quite well last week up against the Las Vegas Raiders. The question at hand here is how much do they believe in Khalil Herbert, because he led the team in rushing yards up against the Raiders. He had 18 rushes for 75 yards. So he was the leader in rushing yards, but Damien Williams is getting all the receptions. Khalil Herbert didn't have a single target in that game. So unless you're in a standard league, then the value of Khalil Herbert is obviously not as good, because in half PPR, full PPR, you really need those targets. You need those receptions to continue to up the value of the player. But at the end of the day, if Damien Williams was to go down, again, knock on wood, we do not root for injuries here. I'm not rooting for Damien Williams to get hurt. But what I'm saying is if Damien Williams was to get hurt, or maybe Bill Lazor saw that, hey, Khalil Herbert looked really good up against the Raiders, maybe we should give him the ball a lot more. And maybe this week up against the Green Bay Packers, he is more involved in the game plan. Again, Khalil Herbert's not a long-term answer, but if you're down bad at the running back position, you can certainly pick him up and start him this week up against the Green Bay Packers, even if it is far from ideal. Next up, we move to the wide receiver position with Cadarius Tony, wide receiver of the New York Football Giants, going up against the LA Rams this week. So again, this is kind of the same scenario that we just talked about with Devontae Booker. Slayton's hurt, Shepard's hurt, Golladay is hurt. How does that kind of impact Tony here in this situation? Because I do not believe Golladay is going to play this week. It seems like he is going to be out based upon what I have read. So Golladay is not going to be there. But Shepard and Slayton, I feel like they might be there. But I feel as though Kadarius Tony, based upon his play in week number 4 and week number 5, he just has to be more ingrained in this offense. Now again, can you trust Jason Garrett to do that? Probably not, right? You probably cannot trust Jason Garrett to just have an epiphany and realize that, hey, Kadarius Tony is good, but I think he realized that last week in week number 5, and he realized that the week before in week number 4. So I hope that Kadarius Tony is given the correct usage, and I believe he will, especially if Golladay is out, which I believe is what is happening due to his injury to the knee. So before his boxing fight from Mr. Kadarius Tony, when he went toe-to-fucking-toe with Devontae Booker in the Dallas Cowboys game, before he smacked them up. Now, I don't understand what these NFL players are thinking when they go to fucking punch a guy who has a helmet on. What is that going to do? It's not going to do anything. That's why you see in the NHL, a lot of the times when they're fighting, they take their helmets off beforehand. They go toe-to-toe with the helmets off. You want to know why? So you don't break your hand fucking punching a Dallas Cowboys helmet. But nevertheless, it was funny, and it makes me like Kadarius Tony even more, if I'm being honest with you. Kadarius Tony in that game had 10 receptions on 13 targets for 189 yards. This motherfucker cooked up Trayvon Diggs and made some Trayvon Diggs soup. Now, he still did, I believe, end up getting an interception in that game, but he gets cooked every single game. People are just down on their knees, gawking this guy because he gets so many picks every single game. It is impressive, though, because I'm pretty sure he has more catches than a bunch of wide receivers in the NFL. But at the end of the day, Kadarius Tony looked great, and he also got 1 rush in that game for 7 yards. If he is able to get just 10 targets, 8 targets every single game, then we could see Kadarius Tony have this huge value week in and week out. He also played quite well up against the Saints, kind of like I was touching upon a little bit earlier. He had 6 receptions on 9 targets. Very nice. I like 6 of 9. My wife, for 78 yards and 1 rush for 1 yard. So it seems like every single game, they're going to give Kadarius Tony a nice rush. Now, is he going to do a lot with it? Probably not, right? Probably not. But he is still going to get that touch, which does give him additional fantasy value. That not every running back in the NFL is going to rush the ball every single game. So I like, or not every wide receiver in the NFL, I should say, is going to rush the ball every single game. So Kadarius Tony has a lot of value. I like him this week, and I believe that he is a piece for the future. He's a factor for the rest of the season, even when Shepard, Golladay, and Slayton are all in the lineup. Next up, we move to another player that is on a bye, because again, there are a bunch of players on bye week this week. Marquez Callaway, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints. He's had 2 solid games in a row at this point. He was a guy that I sung the praises of. Phantom of the Opera. I don't even know if Phantom of the Opera is an opera. I would only assume so. Just singing beautifully. Justin Tucker, he sings opera just like that. I was singing the praises, singing the sweet nothings about Marquez Callaway, and guess what happened? Marquez Callaway bent me and every single person who fucking drafted this guy over a table because he just wasn't being used like he was in the preseason, and eventually Michael Thomas is going to return, but maybe that actually helps Marquez Callaway out. But again, like I said, he has had 2 solid games in a row. Week number 4 up against the Giants, he had 2 receptions on 2 targets for 74 yards, and I was talking about how, hey, you want to add him last week, but that could have been a bit of a fluke. It's not necessarily going to happen that every single week you get 2 fucking targets, you catch both of them, and you get 74 yards. So I told everyone, hey, calm down a little bit on Callaway. I like him, but I want to see him do it one more time, and then I'll be completely bought in to Marquez Callaway. And he did it week 5 up against the Washington football team, going from 2 targets to 8 targets, as well as getting 4 receptions in that game for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. It is very clear that this guy is the number 1 receiver on the New Orleans Saints. So pick him up right now before he's ultimately gone after this week, because I feel like this is the final buy window for Marquez Callaway. Now we move to Rondell Moore, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals, going up against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. But Nick, why do you have Rondell Moore ranked below Callaway? Don't you know Callaway's on bye? I can't even play him this week. Rondell Moore's looked pretty good this season, don't you think, Nick? And I agree, he has looked good, but at the end of the day, the thing with Rondell Moore has nothing to do with Rondell Moore. It's this offense. They have so many good pass catchers. They have Moore. They have D-Hop, obviously. They have Christian Kirk. They have A.J. Green. They also had Double X Max Williams, who appears to be out for the season likely, but they still have Edmonds catching passes. They have James Conner catching passes. So there's a lot of competition, especially in the wide receiver room, for Rondell Moore to get targets. So I think every single week, this is going to be a very convoluted puzzle on which wide receivers to start outside of DeAndre Hopkins, because you start DeAndre Hopkins every single fucking week. It doesn't matter. Except for on the bye week, of course, you start DeAndre Hopkins every single time. Doesn't matter about the defense. Doesn't matter about anything, because he is a focal point in this Cardinals offense. But outside of that, would it surprise me if everyone is gawking on Rondell Moore? They're sucking Rondell Moore off. And this week, A.J. Green scores fucking 2 touchdowns against the Browns. Would that surprise you? Because it wouldn't surprise me. So pick up Rondell Moore. Last week up against the Niners, he had 5 receptions on 6 targets for 59 yards, as well as 3 rushes for 38 yards. So again, I believe Rondell Moore is a very talented player. I just believe that the situation technically is great because Kyler Murray's great. They have this great offense. They're the best team right now in the National Football League. But the situation gets a bit murky because there are so many pass catchers in this offense. So again, I'm not trying to spread hate for Rondell Moore. I like Rondell Moore. He's been really good this season, but just understand that he is a very risky player week in and week out. Next receiver here, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver of the Lions, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals this week, the Cincinnati Bengals. So leader in receptions for the Lions in the last 2 games. Throughout this season, it has been a complete shit show for the Lions. People are talking about St. Brown, they're talking about Khalil Raymond, they're talking about Quintez Cephas, and it seems like every week, whichever wide receiver you say is the guy to start is just completely fucking off. It's a swing and a miss, and I'm not even talking a swing and a miss where you miss by like half an inch. No, it's a swing and a miss. The ball's already in the catcher's mitt, the ump's walking off the field, and you swung. Not even yet. You haven't even swung yet, and everyone's walking off the field, the pitcher's off the mound, and then you swing. That's what I'm talking about, how confusing this fucking situation is. Because last week, I was all over Khalil Raymond. That was wrong. This week, I'm all over Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that'll probably be wrong as well. But it seems like, based upon the statistics, he is the leader in receptions for the Lions. TJ Hawkinson has been doing his best fucking John Cena impression. You can't see me, because he is doing nothing. Absolutely fucking nothing for my fantasy team. And again, I believe he bounces back, but that sucks. So week 5 up against the Vikings for Mr. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7 receptions on 8 targets for 65 yards. More important to talk about here over Amon-Ra St. Brown is Dan Campbell. I feel so bad for that guy. That guy seems like he cares so much about all of these players. He cares so much about winning. When he broke down and crying in the press conference, it made me feel bad for him. I felt bad for the guy because I feel like he truly fucking cares about the team. He truly cares about winning, and he got his heart ripped out up against the Minnesota Vikings. But I also still, again, am pretty certain that St. Brown is the guy to have for this Lions team, but I'm not 100% certain about that. Next up, but again, based upon what we have seen, St. Brown seems to be the guy. Final receiver to be talking about this week, guy we talk about every week at this point because it seems like people just don't want to add him. It's Hunter Renfro, wide receiver of the Las Vegas Raiders, going up against the Denver Broncos in Denver. Now, what is going to happen now without John Gruden? What is going to happen with the new guy being the coach? I have no idea. I have no idea what's going to change. Maybe it's better. Maybe it's better. Maybe it's worse. You never really know how strong the impact of Gruden is on this team. Was Gruden the reason why this team was succeeding, or was Gruden the reason why they have been kind of on a downfall? So obviously Gruden being gone, him resigning, is going to have an impact on this team. Whether it is positive or whether it's negative, I'm not too sure on the play of the team as a whole. Renfro continues to show that consistency, though. 6 receptions on 8 targets for 56 yards against the Chicago Bears. So Renfro is a safe guy. He's not a guy that's going to go out there and drop 30 fucking points on your opponent, but he is a guy that is very consistent every single week and is very reliable in your lineup, especially in a half PPR or a full PPR format. Now on to the final position to discuss in today's video. We got the tight ends, 2 tight ends here, Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots, as well as David Ninjoku of the Cleveland Browns. When it comes to Hunter Henry, this week he's going up against the Dallas Cowboys, which could be a solid matchup for potentially a high-scoring game. His fantasy value continues to rise as the season has gone on, continuing to mostly up his targets every single week. Now, not every week has his targets gone up, but if you look at it from the beginning of the season towards right now, where we're sitting in week number 6 through the first 5 games of the season, his targets have gone up from week 1 all the way until week number 5. So up against the Texans in that week number 5 game, he had 6 receptions on 8 targets for 75 yards as well as a touchdown. Now, again, how reliable are the Patriots tight ends every single week? It seems like very reliable at this point. Seems like Hunter Henry is going to be getting a bunch of points every single week because they just target him so heavily in this offense. Now, Jonnu Smith has been mostly out snapping him every single game, but Henry is the guy seeing a majority of the targets. So I think Henry is definitely the guy to add from that Patriots team. And final tight end, we got David Ninjoku, tight end of the Cleveland Browns, going up against the Arizona Cardinals this week. In week number 1, Ninjoku played well up against the Chiefs, but then after that, he was fucking napping. He's been taking a sleep. He was in a deep sleep. But it appeared in week number 5 up against the Chargers, he woke up. He woke up, 7 receptions on 7 targets for 149 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, can I tell you that this extreme 7 targets a game going to happen for Ninjoku? Probably not. But they're not necessarily sold into Austin Hooper being on the field a lot. They really like using David Ninjoku, and that does up his value. But right now, the tight end position off the waiver wire is down tremendous. So he's the second best out at the tight end position, but obviously he is far from ideals. Thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you do hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, please make sure you hit that like button as well. I love each and every single one of you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.